Where did you meet your spouse?
I met my wife when I was working at a department store, and I was sweeping, and I decided one day I would ask every girl in the store that I came to when I was sweeping for a date, and that's how we met.
What did some things cost when you were little?
I remember buying oatmeal cookies for a nickel and Coca-Colas for about 10 cents, I think.
Where did you live?
We lived in a mill village, which is a little community built up around like it was Cone Mills, and I think it may have even been built by Cone Mills, and so all the houses were fairly small, and they all were just exactly alike. But everybody in the little town, the little mill village, knew everybody else. It was fairly nice.
What did your room or house look like?
My room was pretty normal looking. It's kind of small, but I remember we had the walls were painted dark blue, and my uncle had drawn a mural on one wall, which made it really unique. He had a beach and a lighthouse and a sailboat out on the ocean, and I was really proud of that being in my room.
What is your favorite kind of music?
Rock and roll. Everything from the Beatles, Elvis, to the Spin Doctors and the Gin Blossoms, and I try not to get stuck in the past like some people do. Most people stick with the type of music they liked when they were 18 or 20 years old and like that for the rest of their life. I try not to get hung in the past. But I can't really get into some of the new groups like Stone Temple Pilots and the heavy metal groups, Metallica and Megadeth and all those groups. But I know their names.
What do you think is your greatest accomplishment so far in your life?
Uh, some of the things I'm really proud of are having some articles that I've written reprinted. I had an article about aquariums reprinted in a national aquarium magazine, and I had an article about computers reprinted in a magazine in England. Um, Other than that, something I'm doing now, I'm writing my sort of like my memoirs, not really for publication or anything, but just so my kids can have it. I'm proud of that.
What do you do for a living?
I detail steel, which means that if you drive by a building that's going up and you see columns and beams being built before the rest of the building is built, I draw pictures of each of those individual pieces so that they can take the raw steel from the mills and punch holes in it and cut it to length and then take it to the field and erect it like a giant erector set.
What would you do over in your life if you could?
Uh, Possibly put more thought into what I do for a living instead of taking the first job that comes along, because now I'm stuck. It's too late to start over, and while my job isn't a terrible job, there are other things that I'd really rather do.
How do you want to be remembered by your children and descendants?
As a decent guy, a nice guy, and a guy with a nice sense of humor.
What kind of vacations did you take when you were young?
We went to Carolina Beach, and we went to White Lake.
What kind of vacations did you take when you got older?
We've been to the Bahamas, and we've been to Disney World several times. We've been to Mexico, St. Louis, Texas, and one of the best vacations we ever had was we went to Texas and went to a little town called, to Laredo, Texas, and then across the Rio Grande into Nuevo Laredo in Mexico.
Where have you been and how did you get there?
Other than vacations, I guess just where I've lived, we've lived in Greensboro, and then we moved to Memphis, Tennessee, back to Greensboro, down to North Lauderdale, Florida, which is near Fort Lauderdale, and now back up to Charlotte.
Where would you go anywhere in the world if you could?
I'd like to go to England because I just think it would be really cool to see the places where some of my favorite characters and people in history were, like the Beatles, and of course Sherlock Holmes didn't really exist, but it'd be kind of neat to see those streets and foggy places where Sherlock Holmes was, and where Jack the Ripper and all those characters from the history were. I'd like to see that.
Where would you live anywhere in the world if you could?
Victor Buono once said that he had went to Italy, and he said that Italy was basically Bakersville with tomato sauce. And I've pretty much found that myself living in Memphis, Tennessee, and North Lauderdale, Florida, that wherever you go, there's different scenery, there's different weather, but basically the people are people wherever you go. So it really doesn't make that much difference. I guess just somewhere with nice weather would be nice.
What kind of house would you live in?
I guess you'd have to be an idiot to say I'd like to live in a little teeny shack. I'd like to live in a very big house, you know, with all the nice features and everything, if I could afford to.
Are you happy or a sad person?
I try to be a happy, optimistic person, but you know, sometimes you can't help but get down, but you just gotta keep plugging.
Do you like to have your picture taken?
I don't particularly hate it.
What is your favorite holiday and why?
Well, I've always loved Christmas. I guess that's my favorite. I loved from the time I was waiting for Santa Claus to come until the time I was excited about being Santa Claus.
What's your least favorite holiday and why?
I don't have any holidays that I don't like for any reason.
If you could be any animal, what kind of animal would you be?
I think an eagle, because I think it would be really cool to fly. I enjoy flying when I do have flown, and an eagle particularly because nobody messes with eagles, you know.
How do you think this interview went? Are you happy with it or sad with it?
I was brilliant.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.